On here is that they do want to get a deal done soon. They say they are going to keep meeting every day until that happens. Dylan.
All right. Thank you very much, Kirsten. Vermont's independent senator Bernie Sanders serves on the budget committee. He's called any White House deal that includes Social Security cuts or hurts those who can least afford it a piece of crap. I completely agree with the man. In fact, the absurdity of watching deals cut on those with the least political representation just proves what a bunch of cowards so many of our leaders are revealing themselves to be. Senator, what, if anything, do you feel like you could use some help with to fight some of this?
Look, Dylan, the issue is not whether it's a big deal or a smaller deal. The issue is whether it is a fair deal, an equitable deal. The middle class today is disappearing. Poverty is increasing. People on top are doing phenomenally well, and their tax rates are the lowest in 50 years. Corporations are making huge profits, and many of them are paying nothing in taxes. So what you want to do is say, yeah, let's do deficit reduction. But at least half of that reduction has got to come from the people on top who are doing very, very well. We've got to take a hard look at military spending. People in this country appropriately sick and tired of two wars which continue to go on and on. We've tripled military spending since 1997. And then let's also take a look at every agency of government and see where we get rid of the waste and the bureaucracy. If you do that, you can come up with $4 trillion in deficit reduction. That's a big deal over 10 years. And you don't have to throw children off of Medicaid. You don't have to do away with Medicare as we know it. You don't have to deny the American dream to families who want to send their kids to college. That's what I'm fighting for.
There's so many people out there that on some level share your view, particularly the absurdity of targeting those without political representation, the elderly, the young, the poor, to pay for any of this when we subsidize the banking system. The healthcare system is what it is. We won't get into the details. I go on and on all day. At the very least, is there anything that can be done to protect those without any representation, who obviously are the ones who are taking on the chin here?
Well, look, you make a very good point. 3 years ago, the American people, against my vote, bailed out the crooks on Wall Street who caused this recession. Now these guys on Wall Street are doing phenomenally well. Banking profits are strong. Don't you think maybe we might want to ask Wall Street to help us out with deficit reduction? The Republicans, of course, say absolutely no. They don't want the wealthy to pay one nickel more in taxes for deficit reduction. But what we want, I would like to see, is the president stand strong. Do what every poll says that the American people want done, and that is shared sacrifice, not just balancing the budget on the weak and the vulnerable, and as you indicate, people who don't have all kinds of lobbyists here in Washington, D.C.
Is it too cynical for somebody to sit in a chair like mine, or somebody who watches and consumes political information, and hear extraordinarily rational thought from very rational people, yourself and others, say, listen, why would you solve this on the back of poor and children? It's crazy. No rational person left in their own home would solve a problem like this, which leads you to then think, okay, well, is the reason they're behaving, the political structure, are behaving the way that they are, is because they are so dependent, Senator, on raising money. 40% of the money comes from the banking system. What out of the huge percentage and comes from healthcare, then energy. And as long as the politicians, Democrat and Republican, are so dependent on these very small, very wealthy groups to get money to keep their jobs, you can't do a fair deal. Is that too cynical?
No, I don't. Oh, no, that's not cynical at all. I mean, Dylan, what is clear to, I think, to every thinking American is that the big money interests through campaign contributions and through lobbyists have an enormous influence in terms of what's going on here. Let me give you Social Security as an example. Every poll that's out there says two things. Yes, the rich should pay more in taxes to help us with deficit reduction. No, we should not cut back on Social Security and Medicare. When Obama ran for president in 2008, he said, hey, John McCain wants to cut Social Security. I'm not going to do it. Suddenly the president has reversed his position. So I think the point is, yes, of course, the wealthy and powerful have a huge influence over what goes on here, including this debate on deficit reduction.
And then is it wrong to then take that the next step? And I'm just trying to get, having been so emotional about this myself for years, just to try to have a practical view of what's going on here. If we were, unless we deal with the undue influence of those 6 industries, is that not like walking into an alcoholic's home and listening to his problem with his children and his problem with his wife and his problem with his job and instead, listen, until you stop drinking, sir, you are not going to have a healthy marriage. You are not going to have a happy family. And is not that metaphor appropriate to America? Until we stop drinking from that dependence on money, we'll never get a real debate or a real structural anything.
Well, I think, Dylan, that is a very fair point to make. You have in this country 400 individuals who own more wealth than the bottom 150 million Americans. So you have an incredible concentration of wealth and ownership of the people on top. You have a lot of those people having enormous influence over the media, over both political parties. You have 6 banks that own over half of the assets of our GDP. So unless we begin dealing with those issues and moving away from the oligarchic kind of society that we're moving toward, you're going to continue to have the wealthy and powerful dictating what goes on here in Washington.
Well, your persistence and effectiveness in fighting for basic justice and decency as one of the few, I would say, in this country as a politician is incredibly admirable. I suspect it's part of the reason why you've lost some hair and have the gray ones you do, sir.
Maybe. Thank you very much.
Listen, I'll talk to you next time. Bernie Sanders.